Hi there and welcome to a cEDH video about commanders that used to be great, like top tier level, the best ones in the format, regarded as such, but are more or less dead right now. This is a video for you if you're new to the format and just want to understand a little bit about what used to be good but have more or less shrunk in power level. But I will also try to explain why they have fallen off, because I really like these educational game theory videos where you get to walk away with some information to help you with your deck selection and deck building. But this is also a video for you if you're into cEDH history. So first one I think we should talk about is Sir the Enchanter. Now the reason why he's first on my little list here is because he actually sees some play sometimes these days, but he was regarded as the best or among the top 2 best commanders in the format once, and it's really rare that you run into him. Now the biggest reason why he doesn't see that much play is because he's not red, he's Esper, not Grixis. And you want to play Sur like the Grixis decks, like the Turbo Ad Nauseam, the Turbo Fast Oracle, the Turbo Breach, and he can't do Turbo Breach. He's Turbo Necro, and Turbo Necro is weaker compared to Turbo Breach. But also he suffers from being quite telegraphed, like you see what he's gonna do from a mile away, cast Sur, attack, get Necro and try to win. But also in the lack of red you don't have access to Final Fortune. If he had access to that would help out a lot. So lesson number 1, your color identity really dictates the power level of a commander. Now here's the special case, because once again he is on that Turbo Grixis game plan in mind, but he's on like a Turbo Esper, and that's just harder to do in the current pool of cards that we have. Next one is the Gitrog monster. And I'm honestly really sad about this one, because I used to play this one quite a lot. Therefore I choose the sad froggy art compared to the original one here. Now he absolutely used to be like one of the best commanders in the game, and that's really awesome considering he's black and green only. His combo potential speed was absolutely amazing. And even though he's like fallen off quite heavily, it's still something you could actually bring to a tournament, and I wouldn't be too surprised, but I wouldn't recommend it either. Now the simple big reason why he has fallen off in power level is power creep. Other commander decks and other colors, especially a red mountain burning thing color, have gained a lot more powers than green and black. Or well, black is always strong, but red have really risen in capabilities. And he hasn't really gained much or anything. Next one up is Prosh, Sky Raider of Care, or Food Chain. He was our first Food Chain commander. Used Food Chain to cast Prosh by exiling a bunch of creatures that you had. You gained a bunch of kobolds when you casted Prosh, and then you gained mana from the kobolds, and then you exiled Prosh into the Food Chain, and you had infinite mana that you could only use into creature spells, and then you had to have something in your hand to finish off the match, and now you can hear why it's very ineffective. I honestly think this really showcased the power level cEDH used to be in once. Like if someone would come up to me and say, okay, hey Mons, I have a combo that is on Yund color identities, where I have this card that destroys your own board state to cast your really expensive commander that doesn't do anything from the command zone, and you gain infinite mana, but you can only use that to cast creature spells, so now you can win from an infinite creature trick. And I would probably respond with, we have better things in the format that does the same thing, but better. Power creep, he's been replaced. Looking at this thing right now and thinking back 4 years, I used to be terrified of this thing, or not terrified, but I used to respect it quite a lot. Now, I don't think it has anything to do inside the format. Next one is Mono Blue Archon Dagson. So we used to have this card called Paradox Engine that performed a combo trick with this guy, but then Paradox Engine was banned. But honestly, looking back at the days when Paradox Engine was legal and when you played against it, it wasn't that horrible either. Like, you could stop it and then it sat there sometimes and did nothing. I've personally never lost to this commander, and I have played against it quite a lot when it had Paradox Engine legally in its deck. But back then it was regarded as a very fast commander that could win from the command zone a little bit out of nowhere. But it basically suffers the same problem as all, or not all, but most mono blue commanders. He doesn't really have a good card draw capability. Well, you could argue that he have some form of card draw capability, but it's like very strange card draw capability. Honestly, I've seen this try to grind games and such, and it like struggles forward. He has on only mono blue, which some people will say is great, but I will argue that mono blue isn't really getting it in there quite enough. Strangely, mono blue is actually quite weak. Blue have some of the best cards inside the cEDH format, but those cards require to be synergized with other cards inside this format to be that good. Now it's time to receive some hate! Tasigur the Golden Fang! I know exactly what I'm gonna write. I still play Tasigur, I still see Tasigur being played, and he's still cEDH viable, and you might be somewhat correct. However, he used to be, like, in my opinion, the best commander inside the entire format for a short period of time. But then this happened. Thrasius, and Tasigur was power creeped out of the game. Or out of the game is actually a really strong word, but he shrunk definitely in power level from being the best to being not the best. This is not the video to dictate Tasigur's current standings in the tier list, but the important lesson is that there's a lot of commanders that are cEDH viable, but they're not that good, is because there are other commanders that are doing the exact same thing, but better. Now they're not exactly identical, but close enough. Next one is Yisan, the Wanderer Bard. He was never really considered the best commander, but he was really up there, and some people actually argue that he was the best. But I don't think he was the best, I think he was really good. And a commander that I played quite a lot. One of his biggest problem back in the days was that he was really telegraphed, and big reason why he fell off and didn't see that much play anymore. However, that might honestly have changed, and this is honestly a commander that I think you could bring to a tournament these days, just because today people might say, I actually have no idea what he does. We have seen an influx of a lot of new cEDH players, and that's great, but there might be a lot of them that don't think this is good and might shrug it off as being casual and weak. Because the second biggest problem with him, besides being telegraphed, being the first one, is that he haven't received any form of updates. Well, there are a few green cards that make him a tiny bit better, but nothing compared to how much power creep other commanders have received. But honestly though, in the heat of this video's creation moment, I might actually try to playtest him again, just because there's a chance people might not know what he is actually capable of doing. I suddenly realized I have a really old Yisan deck tech video, and I think I should make an update video. But still, I don't recommend him, there are a lot better commanders out there. From mono green to mono blue, the next one is Teferi Temporal Archmage, Chained Veil. He could basically go infinite mana and draw out his entire deck with the one card combo Chained Veil, and now it sounds absolutely amazing. Full disclaimer though, I actually thought he was really bad when everyone said he was great and everyone played him. Oh well, not the entire world, but he saw a lot of play back in the days. And got a lot of shoutouts for being great. But honestly, I don't think he was ever great back in the days. Of course, I've lost to this once or twice, but it was honestly really easy to beat. It might have even been where I picked up my play style of being a greedy value player. So let me educate you on how to defeat Teferi and everything with a similar sort. You see, this guy can't draw cards. He can play a lot of counterspell, and he usually does. So what he will do is keep a hand of counterspells, or well, a hand that will burst out a lot of mana together with counterspells to get to the Chain Veil and try to win as fast as he can, but also try to counterspell your other opponents and protect his win with his counterspells. So what you do is that you sit and draw cards, try to gain more value and make the game longer, and make this guy interact versus other decks. You will basically sandbag here and then use your counterspells to interact with Teferi later on, and then when you've dealt with Teferi and Teferi have dealt with everyone else, you're in a great position because you have most cards in your hand and you win the game eventually. A control deck that can't draw cards like he can draw cards from the command zone, sure, like 6 mana to look at the top 2 cards of your library and put one of them into your hand, that's really bad card draw from the command zone. But once again, a control deck that can't draw cards' ultimate future is to die out. But it's time to move on and look at, in my opinion, the best, or well, a small time portion of the best. Tasigur was also kinda up there together with this one in my opinion, but Narset Enlightened Master was a really powerhouse. I have actually played this commander a bunch too. I honestly think it's really fun. The big problem and the big reason it's fallen off is a very common problem for a lot of commander decks these days, is that this is a commander-centric deck. it doesn't do anything without the commander. Now, a lot of other commanders these days also have that problem. However, this one is also extremely all in. You wanna cast your 6 mana free color Jeskai commander without haste. You have to pass turn. Like if this had haste, it would probably still see play today, but without haste you have to pass turn, and if it survives, which it never does, it usually gets counterspelled, you will maybe win the game. What you do is go turns. You attack, you hit an extra turn spell, so you cast it, you attack again, hit a new extra turn spell, and then you just go through your entire deck by attacking until there's no deck remaining and you have only turns spells that shuffle them back into the library remaining in the deck, and there you have infinite turns. But being that commander-centric, being that telegraph deck, being that all-in commander means that it's really risky to play this in a cEDH pod, and I absolutely don't recommend it today, even though it was, in my opinion, and I still think that it was back then, really good. I hope you found this video entertaining and that you've learned something new about Commander's weaknesses and strengths. And a great way, I guess, to end this video is with commanders that are great today are great because they aren't commander dependent. They don't need the commander to be good, the deck can function well without it. They're not telegraphed that your opponents can't see or predict when you're gonna win. They can't see cards in play and understand you're gonna win next turn. You could win from nowhere. But thirdly, your commander is sticking with the power creep upgrade that we're receiving. You see, there's a counter future video to this that is the reversed. Bad commanders back in the days that have risen in power level because of power creep. And with that, take care guys, and I'll see you in that futuristic power creep video.